Good evening, everybody, and welcome to 2023 to our second Wednesday Adolescent and Child Coaching Support Group, which is brought to you by Noble Manhattan Coaching. We're absolutely delighted not only to have over 30 people join us today, which is absolutely tremendous, but even more so, we have an expert in the room. We probably have quite a few experts in the room, but the one who's been selected and is being who will be working closely on this one is Aylin Webb. She's a psychologist, she's a coach, and she also tells me that she is a perfectionist. She runs a podcast. I'm a perfectionist, get me help. I'm a perfectionist, get me out of here. She's an author, and I've had the honor to have several chats with her, and it's been absolutely fascinating. So what we're going to do is we're going to run it, as I say, as a chat show, and I'm going to ask questions. But before we do that, the reason why we chose this subject, or I chose this subject, is that I had a client who, as a teenager, said to me, if you could go on mute, please.
10:51.
Who said to me, I'm a perfectionist. I said, okay, and what's that doing to you? Well, you know, and what's all this about? She said, well, the trouble is that I can't write essays. I said, what do you mean you can't write essays? She said, well, because I want to write the perfect essay, I find I put it off. And I put it off and I put it off. I said, so you procrastinate? She said, yes. And the trouble is, the longer I put it off, the more stress I get. So by the time I actually get around to writing the essay, I'm so stressed and so out of time that I don't write a good essay. And that's really where this started. And I started to realize actually that this may be a big problem. I'm not a perfectionist myself, and I freely admit that. I abide by what I call the 80-20 rule. I achieve 80% of the task in 20% of the time. And thus I get a lot done, but perhaps I don't finish things. Perhaps I don't enjoy finishing things. Other people really want to make an absolutely perfect job. And I can understand that. And these people have a gift here in some areas in life. And that gift, I think, is very important. I don't share it. I have to try and think how it would be to be in that. But we're all different, we're all unique, and perhaps that's the benefit of the human race. We are all unique. So anyway, I met Aylin, and I thought, wow, what a great topic, because there must be a lot of people out there who've also got the same problem. And why are perfectionists just so? What does it lead to? How can we actually help perfectionists and get them and help them to achieve what they want to achieve without disappearing down that awful spiral into a panic situation, and perhaps even worse? So anyway, welcome, Aylin.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
We're absolutely delighted that you're with us today. So Aylin, you're not originally from the UK, are you?
No, originally I'm Turkish. I was born and bred in Istanbul until when I was 19, I moved to Denmark for a few years and then made my way to UK, which I'm really, really glad that I did. UK is my home. I love it here. I really do. So it's lovely to be living in the UK.
And as you are now, you know, you have you told me you have a sort of a string of degrees and things like that behind your name. How did you actually get to that stage?
How
did you get to the stage of your education and where it's taken you today?
Well, let's start from the beginning, perhaps. That my parents, I mean, they're lovely. However, there are the first 10 years of our lives are really important, aren't they? Because you're really learning about yourself, the world, and others as well. So you're forming an identity and you're forming an idea about the world around you. And most of the things that I could hear was about people talking about my father and what a genius he was and how intelligent he was. And all his friends would always tell us, oh, we always call your father walking library girl, because he just, whatever you ask him, he will always answer. So my dad was very intelligent. He was in a really good place at work as well. He was very admired. And I think from a very early age, for me, it was an impossible standard to reach. Not just for me, but really for many people to reach. He just had this photographic memory. And my mother, she was very organized, and everything in the house had a certain place. And even if you just turned them, she knew. So she had those really high standards in the house, which we had to very rigidly always follow. The way we put the plates, it had to be the flowers in a certain way. And for breakfast, it was different. And for dinner, it was different. And day to day still, we are expected to do so. However, I have also seen these things taking away the joy of the moment from my mother. But that came a lot later, because I think that I did university, but it was really nothing academic. It was nothing amazing like other people would, because I wasn't that intelligent. I wasn't that intelligent to go to a proper university in my mind. So it was always other people who did really well in university, and like my dad, and who did the masters and so on. So I think that I have then chosen to put my value into having high standards in my home. And my first husband, he was always complaining, this is like a showroom. It doesn't look like a place that people live in. It's like everything is just, so clean and in so much orderly. And I spent a lot of time doing that, because I could not even imagine. And we lived in Denmark, so people didn't care in reality. People wouldn't come to my house and say, oh, it's a bit dusty. But for me, it was like day in, day out, and every evening, just cleaning the house and making sure it was spotless, because I put my self-worth in a clean and orderly house. That was what I had seen. That was important. And I had no idea it was perfectionism. And I have to say, I guess that to start with, let's just have a look at what we are really talking about, because I hear many people often talking about perfectionism as it is something positive, it's something good. They go, oh, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Or, oh, it's my weakness, in a job interview. And really, the reality cannot be further from that. Perfectionism, I have actually put some notes here. Some of the people that I have interviewed for my book, they came up with some really amazing, I think, explanation of what perfectionism is for them. And one of them said, setting such relentless standards upon yourself and others that it continuously steals the joy from your life and leaves you with constant sadness, frustration, anger, exhaustion, and guilt. Another one said, a trait to strive for an unachievable, self-imposed outcome, which is harming because the realm of perfect does not exist. So these are just a couple of those. For me, I think perfectionism is fear of failure and constantly fearing not being good enough and failing, hidden under a fancy name like perfectionism. So really, in a nutshell, it is fear of failing and others judging you, or that they will find out you're not good enough.
So when was it that you realized that you were a perfectionist?
Yes,
In those
after
days?
spending so many years of cleaning and tidying, too many years, but I think I decided actually quite a late age. I was working when I came to UK. I came to UK because I was working as a TV producer in Fox Kids, then in Disney. So I've been in corporate world for 15 years, Universal Channel and so on. And during, after about a decade in television, I started thinking, when I hit my 50s, this work will be too much. And perhaps I should kind of start pursuing what I really, really wanted to do. I always wanted to study psychology. So I had been really for a while looking at the perhaps part-time ways to study it while I did my full-time work. And so I started just doing undergraduate. And to be honest, I thought, I'm just going to take the first subject and see how it goes, because I really didn't think that I was good enough to finish a proper degree. And while working full time and bringing up my daughter and having a family, I did. So every year I was like, I wonder. And so every year after year, and I graduated, which was like, oh my God, I have a psychology degree. And then I decided to do postgraduate with cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's when I started actually learning to look inside myself as well. I think the first thing you do is to help yourself before you can help others, understanding yourself and where some things are coming from. And then I went ahead and did the master's, which I never thought I ever could. It was always other people, the intelligent people, who would do the master's, and I guess I proved myself wrong. And I did that in forensic psychology. But I decided not to go that way, decided to stay with people, which is my passion. And that's when I started realizing, especially at uni doing my master's dissertation, oh my God, how much procrastination was going on. It was like all the washing was done, the dinner was cooked, and I hate cooking. And, things were ironed and everything, instead of sitting down and starting my dissertation. And I would sit down and I would go like, oh, I think I need to put some washing on. And then off I go again. So lots and lots of procrastination. And I have then started looking into this and realized that I spent a lot of time just worrying that it's not going to be perfect. I'm not going to get the perfect outcome, and that I'm not going to get the perfect mark, the grade, and that people will say, oh, there you go, you weren't good enough. And that would prove to me that I was not good enough. So there was that fear all the time that it was not, I gave up a lot of things because I was fearing that I wasn't gonna be good enough. It wasn't gonna be just perfect. And I gave up piano when I was 12 because it just wasn't sounding perfect. And obviously I was just not, I didn't have the talent. I convinced myself when I later in life, now I hear that it's all about the more you do it, the more you learn. It's about patience and it's about repetition. So yes, that's kind of how how I came to where I am, but as I was working the past 9-10 years with people, I have noticed perfectionism underlying on the core of a lot of issues, as well, a lot of psychological problems. And I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't think it's recognized enough. Some of my clients, they say they thought perfectionism was something that the perfect people had, even if that ever exists, and that perfectionists are the people. And even I thought that. There were times I thought, am I a fake perfectionist? Because I haven't actually been at that really successful top of the CEO and always A levels, A and so on. And I didn't burn out because of that. No, we have that perception that perfectionism is only about people who are going for high grades and success and being at the top of the game. Perfectionism affects us. It has got so many different faces
Interesting.
that we do not realize.
Yeah, you mentioned there A levels, you mentioned grades and things like that, and that's just sort of bringing it down to the teenagers and perhaps even younger than that.
Absolutely.
When we were speaking earlier, you mentioned that so this is where your passion was really beginning to grow, was in this sort of the teenage and the pre-teen area. Could you go into a bit more there? You know, what can we do to help these guys?
Well, let's just have a look at how it's affecting them to start with, and I think then once we have a good idea about really what kind of things are affecting them and how they become these perfectionists with high expectations from themselves, and perhaps what they think that others are expecting of them and how that is affecting them. Would that be okay? I don't know. Shall we have a look? Because the society is really, I think as a society, and as we are changing, the identities are changing, the social media is affecting the young people to very negative high levels. I will, for example, start by saying that Instagram, I found out recently that Instagram has something or something called Facetune. It is an app, and everyone, you can take a picture and then you put a filter and you look amazing. Yeah, and everything goes, and the bum is lifted and the legs are longer and thinner and whatever. So what's happening now is that what they see, they don't actually see the real people anymore. So that is about the the appearance, the physical looks that are filtered. They're not real. Plus, they always see people taking pictures. Oh, look at us, we are having so much fun. Oh, look at us, we are with our friends. And look at me, I'm this and I'm that, and I look gorgeous. And no one put their pictures when they're crying, or when they're upset, or when they're feeling lonely. So there is that perception that when you, as a young person sitting there in your room, everyone else has the perfect life and mine is miserable, because everybody puts this image of themselves that at the perfect times, that is the perfect life, the perfect holiday, the perfect time with their friends. And it's all an illusion, impossible to reach. But when you look at that all day long, you start feeling lower about yourself, and you start comparing yourself negatively to others. So the guy who did this app, I think his name is Zief Farman, and he says that he feels like he won the lottery because his app is so popular. Everyone is using it. So it's all about the perfect look, the perfect face. And look, I mean, people are having Botox done, and the cosmetic surgery is in the rise. So it's not just the 17, 16, 15-year-olds, but the generation for the past 25 years, it shows the measurements, the research shows that it's at alarming level. Perfectionism is rising, and there are 3 types of it. They have been able to measure since about 1989. They made a measurement to kind of see the type of perfectionism people are presenting. And there are 3 of those. One of them is my expectations from myself, my high expectations. This is my high levels, my high standards, and I'm not accepting anything less from myself. And that bar also, every time you achieve it, which is really, really, really difficult, that bar rises. So, for example, you really want to go to Cambridge. And if you manage to do that, you work really, really hard and beat yourself up when you don't get the grades. But when you reach that, you dismiss that achievement and you just go, yeah, whatever. And the bar is just raised up a little bit more. So not celebrating your achievements and just dismissing them is another part of perfectionism. Someone said, which I thought was amazing, that social media is a weapon of self-destruction, targeting our self-worth and self-esteem non-stop. It's there all the time, especially for young people. And from very young age, just parents here and teachers, if there are any, from very young age, because of the expectations of the society, because of the image of success, how it should look like. Look at the social media, look at the magazines, look at the television. How does success look like? Money, 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 money. My image is I'm in a high level management, I'm an executive, I'm making lots of money, I've got a big house, I've got a good car, I have got another car. I go on great holidays with my perfect family. So that's the image all the time that's being imposed. And what we then do is we want the best for our children. We want them to have it all as well. So of course we start then passing on that anxiety onto them, consciously or subconsciously, from really early ages. The society is now bringing on the tests and you've got to work hard for these tests so you can go to a better school and you can then get the high grades, which will then take you to, so constantly testing and grading and so on. And then you can then go to the university that you want, that will get you the job that you want, that will pay you the money for that perfect life. And so subconsciously, we are looking at this in the society where our parents or my grandparents, they wouldn't even dream of, my grandparents didn't have a car. And they didn't have a house. They didn't have a big house. They just lived in a 2-bedroom flat with their 4 children, and they were grateful for what they had. So, and when I was going to school, I had 2 pencils and a pen, and I was grateful for those, and I didn't need more, to be honest. I didn't, that was okay. The 2 pencils did the job, and when they finished, I got 2 more. So, but I use them up as well. I don't know if there's anyone here that remembers those days that you would use your pencil until it was like this little. So we are now, we want more and more. And we want them now. The young people, if you think about Amazon is delivering next day, if not the same day. We get something and we want it now as well. So there's that urgency of the things we want to get. And it shows that, the research shows that from 2002 to 2017, spendings on things like jewelry, watches, phones have doubled, according to Bureau of Economic Analysis. Doubled. We are just spending so much on status goods that will show higher status. So, and of course, that's our children are seeing this and they are living it as they go to school. So, of course, the pressure of performing is immense. It's high, and I see more and more young people simply crashing under this pressure. The pressure of social media, the pressure from friends of how they should look, what they should wear, and how they should act in social situations, and how they should perform at school.
Okay, so effectively what I understand you're saying is a sort of perfectionism is a sort of a striving to just be as high up as they can be, and that's sort of manifesting itself in this sort of overwhelm, is it?
Well, perfectionism is really fear of failure.
Okay.
Yeah, so that fear is affecting, of course, the performance. I mentioned earlier the 3 types. One of them is your own high expectations from yourself, the high standards. The other one is the high standards you expect from others. For example, if you're a manager, you're like, oh, no one else will be able to do this as I do, as good as I do. So I'm going to take whatever my team has done and redo them or perfect them. Yeah, so that as a team, we deliver the perfect project. And then the third one is what you feel, what you think that others are expecting of you. This type of perfectionism has been rising at an alarming level. It has doubled. It's gone from 9% in 1989 to 18% in 2017. And it's expected that by 2050, 1 in 3 young person will be suffering from this type of suffering from psychological problems caused by this kind of perfectionism of what I think others are expecting of me. And I see that in young people in terms of, I don't want to disappoint my parents. If I don't get into this university, my teachers will be so disappointed in me, or my parents will be disappointed in me. My friends will laugh at me. So they don't know that, they haven't heard that, and maybe the teachers or everyone can be really supportive and say, you just get into whatever you get into, but they still perceive that there are those high expectations from them. So
basically, are there any boundaries to this? Can we find a way of sort of imposing boundaries that would help people to not to think that they've all got to aspire to those really high standards? Because some of us can't and probably won't achieve those high standards for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But it's a case really of perhaps being you know, as good as you can be.
Exactly. So yes, of course. Now, firstly, just be aware, recognizing this, because perfectionism can come in different ways. So it can come in academic work, it can come in professional life. So you might even, some of you might recognize some of those things, and it can it can come in your sports performance. So if you're, if your children or the young adults you're working with, if they're doing sports, watch for their performance and how that they don't burn themselves out. And I think that's the important thing. There's nothing wrong with wanting to succeed. There's nothing wrong with wanting to fulfill your full potential, wanting to get to good places if that's what you want to do. The problem is when you fear that you will fail and that it will mean you're a failure. So when you identify yourself with the flaw or the fail, you applied for a job and you didn't get it, you identify yourself as a failure over your whole lifespan. So it's not about that job interview, it's not about that university interview that you didn't get into, but that it becomes about you and that you are a failure.
Okay, so is perhaps, I mean, you've really stressed the word failure here. Now,
Yeah,
I've been taught that failure doesn't exist.
it doesn't.
Failure it may be a mistake, it may be a lesson to learn, but failure doesn't
Exactly.
exist. And the same with losing.
Yeah, I call it a bounce. I think when you don't get something that you want, it is a bounce. You bounce from one point to the next point, and then you learn something and you bounce to the next point. Like Edison said, Thomas Edison, he said, I have not failed. I just found 1,000 ways that didn't work. So failure doesn't exist for us who knows more, Ian, but for those who are perfectionists, for example, that's failure is very close to their heart and their identity. So they always strive to be perfect and do better, so that people don't judge them and that people don't realize they're not good enough or that they're failure. Because they say, if someone comes and says, hey, I've got a project, can you take that on? They'll find it difficult to say no, because they'll think, people will think I'm not good enough. And if I keep saying no, I'm failing my job. Yeah. So they think a lot of in directions of failure, even though, yes, for everyone we touch, we tell them, yes, the failure doesn't exist. And that is the difference between striving for fulfilling your potential and perfectionism. That one of them is very rigid and the other one is flexible.
So
does it make sense?
It makes tremendous sense to me, and I expect it makes tremendous sense to other people as well. But so how can we prepare our young to identify this aspect and be able to ride with it, to be able to ride over it? Because surely some people there are genuine perfectionists. They are so focused in achieving that. We make some brilliant finishers. If they want to do a job, they do it incredibly well.
Yes, so there are lots of positives as well, as long as it doesn't take away lots of other things.
Okay, so how can we how can we talk with our young, as parents, perhaps as teachers, as coaches, as therapists, as counselors, to help them to realize that actually the world isn't about achieving the the assumed goals, perhaps, but rather achieving their own goals.
Yes, so I guess there are certain signs to look out for to start with. They're about the thought processes that you might notice, so you can watch out for some signs in terms of the thoughts and beliefs about themselves and about the work they're doing, and their emotions and their behavior. They may not be talking much about emotions, perhaps. Young people are not always easy to unpack their emotions to their parents, but you can, for example, watch out for when they put their own self-worth into the project that they do or the grades that they get. So if with a flexible mind, you would be like, okay, you know what, I can now prepare better for the next exam because my teacher told me what kind of things I'm missing here in this exam. So now for the next exam, I'll look more into them so I can grow. Yeah. So you learn from the mistakes you do and shortcomings, but you take them as a part of growth. Where if you're a perfectionist, you fall apart.
Okay.
It's as close to end of the world. It identifies you as look, I'm a failure. I'm no good. So so a lot of I must always deliver the perfect grades, the perfect project, and then beating yourself up in terms of I'm such an idiot for making that mistake, and going over and over and over again, and not trusting other people that they will do as good job, and worrying about other people judging you are some of the thought processes. In terms of behavior, it's a lot of procrastination. So you would be spending a lot of time not doing anything, like your example, Aylin. Just they say, I mean, my excuse, I have to say, was, well, I'm planning it in my head. but really, action. And action is important. So imperfect action is better than perfect inaction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so realistically, it's a case of not so much knocking the aspirations, but being ready to sort of, if you like, go with the punches or go with the flow. All of these sort of things, in order to say, if you don't succeed, don't worry too much, because it may be that there are other ways of succeeding. I mean, if you get people who are artists, who are sculptors, all of those who've got this real dedication to get things exactly the way they want them, which is fine. But in a way, if there is room for that, surely, then that is a great achievement. So is it sometimes perhaps about balancing the requirement with time, perhaps?
It's really interesting that you're talking about the artists, because it's actually this month's podcast, my podcast this month. I'm talking to a photographer and their struggle about putting out their work, because they're not sure whether it's perfect. So so there is a certain element of that as well, with being judged by other people. I think that what really matters is firstly being aware of the signs, really just watching out for the signs, but don't bring that anxiety on. We need to be wary about not passing on that anxiety. Are you okay? Did you get your grades? It's also, we want the best for them, but also it's very easy to make our children feel that they're not good enough, with our expectations of them. So I think that unconditional love unconditional love is really important, that we make that so clear, because we are their first, closest and carers, and that unconditional love is really, really important. And then teaching them to learn about self-love, self-acceptance, and self-care. I can see, this we talked about, this is going to be interactive, and I hear my voice all the time. So I can see that someone wants to ask a question. Would that be okay, Ian?
Well, there's plenty of questions. In fact, I was just about to say, you've blessed us with 45 minutes of pure gold. And I thought it might be time to sort of allow you to relax a bit. And one of the people I was just about to bring into the conversation is Yanax here, because she is teaching in universities and has, again, gone through many countries, currently in Amsterdam, I believe. Yanax, if you'd like to take yourself off mute.
Hello, my name's Annie Langan. Sorry, that it says Langex on the text. Yeah, I'm calling from Amsterdam. I have lived in 5 different countries, including the UK and Ireland. And I suppose as parents, as teachers and coaches, of course, what's very present in our minds is the recent corona situation. I was, as many of you perhaps were working online, an enormous explosion, as you're saying, Aylin, of depression in students, and I'm talking about university students in this case. And I was a second year focus coordinator for the International Business School where I work. And I was just writing down as you spoke, because it was very inspiring to think about how we were able, and in this very difficult situation, which is, of course, to some extent continuing because of, as you described, the social media aspect, etc. And you were really coming onto it there, talking about self-love, because what I found was really helpful, maybe it's helpful for other people to hear, students shared that this is very helpful, was a number of things. I just put a list down. Humor, connecting with humor, talking about your own humanity and your own failures as a lecturer in my case. Connection was so vital because that was what was missing, of course. Personal connection, and just being able to exchange, because so many of us, all of us as adults, know that we have often had these situations where you feel like you're the only person having a problem. And then knowing that all the other people are having the same problem once you've talked to other people was enormously helpful, I noticed, for students. And of course, role modeling that good enough is good enough, and laughing at yourself as a senior person, as a parent, or as a teacher. I think these things were some of the areas that the students fed back to us were enormously important in making them feel less imperfect in their perfectionism.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really like the part about humor and being able to make fun of yourself as well, because you're right, everything has become too serious, isn't it? That even I remember growing up, I always felt, I must have heard it somewhere, that my hands were just so fat and ugly. And then there is that point that I love them now, because my hands have been writing all the essays and, doing everything that I wanted to do, and doing some amazing macrames that I create. And so teaching them the appreciation rather than, what is the function of our body? What is it doing? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And so if my finger is wonky, well, as you say, here's my wonky finger. And just being able to make fun of that. I will treasure that that information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that I love your example of a bounce rather than a failure. That's such a lovely example for us to be able to share with students or our children, because we all recognize it and we can come up with stories. Storytelling, of course, so important about how you move on from what is so-called failure. I do think it does differ a bit, I'm of course generalizing here, from society to society about this pushing degree. I know one of the things I appreciate about the Netherlands is there's a saying in Dutch about act normal is a little bit like calm down, it's not that bad, come on, we're just human. And that I find very refreshing in academia, etc.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems is that we are trying to make the young people, trying to make the imperfect human perfect, which doesn't exist.
Well, that's our role, I think, as teachers and parents, to reassure young people that that's not necessary.
Yeah. And the fact that recently I came across, apparently the researchers, the scientists have kind of calculated the probability of each and every person being born, the probabilities of your parents meeting and staying together, and their parents meeting and staying together, and so on and so forth, that the chances of us being born is 1 in 400 trillion. That makes we are miracles. We are walking miracles, each and every one of us. And there is 7.9 billion people on Earth, and there's only one Ian. There's only one Alison, there's only one Julia, and there's only one Annie, there's only one Aisha, one Aylin. There's only one of us. There's no one else like each and every one of us. And that makes us really special and unique. And that is something that I bring in to my sessions as well.
If I can just finish off, because I know other people want to ask as well, but that I think what's so important is to, I see quite a few questions about having high standards. There's nothing wrong. Of course, it's very important to have high standards and do things really well, but it's this balancing of our humanity with it that is very helpful with the coaching process and the parenting process and the teaching process. Thank you so much, Aylin.
Thank you so much. But I think the really most important part between striving for success or having high standards versus perfectionism, high standards, is that those standards identify your self-worth. And so when you don't reach them, you doom yourself to be a failure and nothing, stupid, and so on. So it's
very connected with boundaries, which is really important for us to help students and children with as well. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today.
Tricia brings out a lovely point here, saying, talking about group coaching to help students to understand they're not alone in their perfectionism, which I think is absolutely superb. In fact, one of the things that we provide through Noble Manhattan Coaching on part of our adolescent and child coaching courses is effectively a lesson that can be used in schools about perfectionism, and it's very useful. This is one of 50 for. Well, it's actually one of 100 if you take about the whole range of students between the age of 4 and 18. So, there's a tremendous wealth there. And perfectionism is one of those targets which can actually be very usefully presented to a class, to a small group, but without boundaries, without judgment, in a coaching way. And that is the benefit of what we can do these days. Perhaps this is where we should be getting into the PSHE side of things and providing these life skills in a better format for people like that. Ruth brings out an interesting point here, saying perhaps as basically as parents and teachers that we should, I think Ruth's actually saying we should admit our mistakes and use them as learning tools for those students and our young. I think that's absolutely a brilliant idea. None of us is perfect. Each of us is unique as well, you said, Aylin. But perhaps there are times when actually you say, oops, made a mistake. Now, what can we as a family learn from this? And therefore take some of the pressure off these people, off these young people, and say, well, actually, life is not perfect. I always thought my dad was absolutely perfect and things like that. And yet here he is saying, I goofed. Well, okay, perhaps I've taken a notch out of him, but perhaps he's showing me that life may be unfair, life is not perfect, but life is there to do the best that we can, to give ourselves permission to do the best that we can be. And for some that could mean finishing a sculpture that is absolutely superb in their eyes. Brilliant. For others, it could mean multitasking to such an extent they get an awful lot done, but not particularly well, but well enough. And perhaps it's a case of trying to educate our young, perhaps re-educate the older members of our society, and to accept what our seniors are saying, hey, life is what you make it, but you don't have to make it too hard. But the trouble is, when it comes to social media that we talked about earlier, and Aylin, you brought this one out, the more time the young have spent on their phones just idly scrolling through, and I'm sure COVID has assisted the onset to a certain extent of a lot of this, of the body images and things like that. So perhaps there is a huge amount that we can learn. And perhaps there are ways that I may be preaching to the choir, as they say, that we're all here because we know. But how can we get other people to understand that? How can we get the parents to say, hey, life is not perfect. Take the pressure off your children. By all means, encourage them, but don't expect them to achieve what you want them to achieve, because they are not you. And I've seen it in, we see it on television. We see these mums who drag their children to various dance classes and what am I looking for? Auditions and things like that, because they want them to aspire to what they want to be, forgetting that actually they're different people.
I have to disagree with you there, Ian, because
okay, I'm very happy for people to disagree with me. It's wonderful.
I've been a mum that's actually put my children and needs and wants and likes forward, and for them to be themselves. And I find it's their peers that makes them perfectionists as well. They want.
Absolutely, Sarah. I'm not saying that that's the only way.
No, I know.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. It's the peer pressure as well as the, it may not be any one particular one. It may not be everything, but peer pressure is certainly, they want to be part of a group. They want to be accepted.
And I think
is that where I'm coming? Is that where you're coming from?
I think that's right, because my daughter's a perfectionist, and I think I'm a perfectionist when I look at it. If I looked at it honestly, and I agree.
Hopefully, Sarah, a reforming perfectionist. Because once you're aware, then you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing now, and then you kind of shift the unhelpful
I
way.
should shift now. Yeah.
but I think, yes, there are things that we can control. There are things within our control in the inner circle, and then there are things on the outer circle that is outside our control. But within our control, I think we can really teach them self-acceptance. And when we really teach the self-acceptance and self-love and self-care and uniqueness, that they're okay as they are, then we kind of build up that against the fear of judgment, that if they're judged, they're like, yeah, okay, so that can be easier to deal with that, or if other, or even imagining that people will judge you. So being okay that, you know, there are some people that won't like you, there are some people that will, and because we are human, just like you don't like somebody, we don't like everybody, do we? But so we end up wanting to be liked by everyone, and that's not fair to everyone either. Right? So we can't expect everyone to like us. And so just teaching our children that that's okay. Just like you don't like everybody yourself, it's okay that sometimes others don't like you. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. You're okay as you are. Just
So why do you,
that idea that you are okay, you are unique as you are.
so why do you think we're now in this sort of situation where, as you said, perfectionism is on the rise, and so therefore, conversely, people are not getting that message of I'm okay? Why did they in the past and not now?
Because in the past, I mean, even when my daughter was in her teen years, there wasn't Facebook. There was this media messaging, something I cannot remember what it was. When she was actually bullied. But there is the social media now is everywhere, and it is, as I mentioned earlier, it is self-destruction, massive weapon of self-destruction of self-esteem. So helping our youngsters. Thank you, and thank you for joining, Tricia. Building up their self-esteem is really important, because perfectionism starts also luring in with lack of self-esteem. So you try to make everything perfect in order to be accepted and feel good enough about yourself. But if you learn to accept that you know, you do something's great, you do something not so great, and that's okay. If you could accept that about yourself, if we could teach our children that would make life, that could keep perhaps perfectionism further away and self-acceptance closer to their heart.
So whose responsibility is that?
I think that, well, firstly, unfortunately, I think we really need to be careful with social media. But even, I would say that even the adults are affected by social media, television, commercials, magazines, you know, this perfect look. Look at her dress, I want that dress. Or look at her hairstyle, I want that hairstyle. And just identifying success with images. And yet it turns out that they made research in Harvard University, and people earning up to $75,000, they feel really, really happy up to that amount, because it makes a difference in their lives. It provides them mortgage, so a house to live in, they can feed their children, they can have a car, so life is easier, and go on perhaps a holiday as well as a family. Anything after that, people tend to, if you're earning 100,000, when you ask people, they want 200,000. They say, I'll be happier if I had 200. And when they get 200, they say, I'll be happier if I got 300. And so that is called the hedonic, the hedonic, what's the word? Climb, that whenever you get something, you know, you will hear people say, oh, only if I had a 4-bedroom house, that would be so great. We would be so happy because then we would have that extra room and so on. But once you get it, a month or two later, doesn't do anything. You don't stay happy. You win lottery. We know, the research shows from the lottery winners, you're happy just for a month or two, and then you're back to your normal self. It's not making you any happier, if not actually making unhappier, because you end up losing friends and so on. So maybe teaching those values, that there are really other things that we cannot buy with money. Gratefulness, appreciation. These are really important things to teach our children as well, appreciating what we have, learning to appreciate what we have and not everything of value. So helping them finding their values. Sorry.
I was going to say, I agree with that, because I only earn 16,000, but that's, the money's not it. I think I work with learning disabilities and challenging behaviour at the moment. I'm grateful for my health, and I'm grateful for the fact that my children are able to do things. Just mean they haven't got learning disabilities. So there's a lot of people that have got a lot of pressures, and I'm very grateful that I am who I am, you know.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. Yes, I think we forget in this fast moving world, we are so busy with everything else, that we forget to stop regularly. And like I said, thank you, my hands. Thank you for doing the job that you're meant to do. Thank you, my feet, even though you might not be gorgeous. Thank you, my legs, for taking me out for a walk every day. You may not be long, you may not be thin, but you're my legs, and you're doing a great job. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. So being appreciative of yes, and just values, I think, what kind of a person we want to be, what kind of a friend, what kind of a daughter, son, cousin, colleague, and so on.
I think we've had a tremendous hour of information from you, Aylin.
Yeah, sorry, I'm so
it's
so
been
passionate
absolutely brilliant.
that I've bombarded you.
And it's lovely to hear your passion, to feel your passion, because there's many of us here, and the reason why we're here is because we are very interested in just this purpose, whether it's for personal reasons, whether it's professional reasons. It really doesn't matter, but it really is a case of the more we can work together to help the upcoming generation, hopefully some of it might actually rub off on their parents to a certain extent, and that's the benefit of what we try to provide with our coaching training. So it's absolutely fascinating to explore a subject which is obviously dear to a lot of people's hearts, and is far more important to an awful lot of youngsters who get sucked into this machine of I'm told I've got to do this, and I want to do a good job because I respect my teacher, and my teacher says I have got to work harder. I will try and work harder. I will work harder rather than I'll try and work harder. And just accepting that not everybody is the same. And also messages in a class. If you've got 30 children in a class, they're all going to hear a message of encouragement in a different way, because perhaps the way they've been brought up. And to a certain extent, if schools are being assessed, if teachers are being assessed by the grades their students get, they're going to want their students to get the best grades rather than the best grades that the students can get. And perhaps there's a difference there. So perhaps there's a huge, huge lesson to learn for all of those who are involved with the young, which realistically is all of us. And unless anybody's got anything really vital to say or desperate to say, I think we're going to call a halt. It's all gone very quiet. Great. Aylin, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
It
so
has been
much.
absolutely wonderful that you can bring some positivity, apart from anything else, onto what is actually quite a challenging subject, but also to bring your experience, your personal experience, and your knowledge to this meeting. It's been superb. I certainly have sat back and listened and learned, and I hopefully many others have too. So thank you so much indeed.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and I'm really humbled. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you all, and I hope you found it helpful and useful. And I'm always I'm here. If you want my details, you can either ask Ian or I can write.
I will be sending out an email to everybody,
yeah.
And
so
I will include your
if you have
details,
any
Aylin.
questions, any questions, just let me know. I'm always happy to help.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear, isn't it? I know there's one or two. I can see Judith nodding sagely, one of the experts, and Helen and Helene and things like that. We are all in this together.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that you want to talk about, well, you've got my email address. You will have Aylin's address as well. So, we'd love to hear back. And if you've got any bright ideas as to how we can get the message across still further, then let's all work together to achieve. Let's all work together to achieve. And with that remark, next session will be Wednesday, February the 8th. And I'm just trying to line somebody up for that at the moment to talk about the challenges that they are expert in, which is always good, which means that I don't have to profess any expertise at all, because that's the best way of being about it, because I don't have any.